welcome everyone to today's session. I am Sharon Bly, and I am the leader for our work on collaboration for healthier lives here at the Consumer Goods Forum. And I'm thrilled that we're hosting today's session with one of our valued members, Unilever, with a topic on in our Employee Health and Wellbeing work stream, and we are going to look at the future of work. So I'm thrilled to have Paddy Hull with us today, Unilever's expert, who's going to guide us through this agenda and help us understand and think differently and broadly around what the future of work may look like. So get lots of questions ready, and of course, if you're not listening to us live today, we'd be thrilled to follow up with you after today's session if you're clicking onto this at another date you're downloading it from the CGF website. It's never too late to get that question into Paddy for today's session. So just before we get into the webinar, of course, during the Q&A section, we will be respecting the antitrust caution statement. So I'll just leave that up there for one or two seconds so we can all take a moment to read that. And thank you for respecting that during today's meeting. So if you want to ask questions on today's session, and I do hope you will take this opportunity, you have, of course, the Q&A possibility in your in the bar at the top or the bottom of your screen. And of course, if you just want to pop something in the chat, Paddy or myself or we'll get back to you on those questions. So please get thinking as you hear the presentation, and yeah, we look forward to connecting with you for questions at the end of the presentation. And I just wanted to leave you with, before I hand over to Paddy, just some context of how this fits in to the overarching work of the Consumer Goods Forum in our coalition of action on collaboration for healthier lives. We have a vision globally to empower healthy people around the world. We want to help people to live these healthier lives and create shared value for everyone that we work with, whether that's a member of the CGF, a public authority, an academic, consumers, communities all over the globe. And of course, to do that and to reach that vision and mission, we have to look after our workforces and the people who keep this industry moving in the 70 countries where our members are active around the globe. So healthy people and healthy workforces, whether that's physical or mental well-being, is of course key to achieving these global healthy people around the globe. And within that work stream, we have, of course, a group of strategic leaders who help us to drive forward, whether that's sharing leading edge strategies, whether it's our Workforce Nutrition Alliance that we have with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, or everything we're doing to really try to work with all of our members and stakeholders to improve well-being across organizations and multiple environments and sites that we have with all of our members. And of course, this session today is part of trying to accelerate that learning process here that you can see on the bottom, the foundational piece of what we're trying to do at the Consumer Goods Forum. So I'm thrilled that Paddy has agreed to join us today. And of course, just think of all your questions as we move through today's session. And Paddy, I will hand it over to you.
Super. Thanks so much, Sharon. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to share my screen quickly so that we're all ready.
The supported generation of families in the local.
I was sharing this earlier on just to test that it's all working. So let me just get back to the start. There we go. Sharon, I'm assuming you can see that all right?
All good. Thank you.
Great. Super stuff. So hi, everyone. Yes, I look after learning and the future of work at Unilever, and delighted to be with you all today on International Women's Day. So just want to shout out to all the great women leaders I work with, like Tina Steck, who's invited me onto this call with you all today. I feel privileged to work alongside so many great women at Unilever, and really chuffed that our initiatives to drive gender balance within the organization are really bearing fruit at the moment. And the work I do on the future of work is absolutely aligned to making sure that we can continue in this journey. Because I know when people speak about the future of work, there's often a bit of confusion about exactly what do we mean and what does it mean for people. And I think there's sort of two opposing views at the moment. One is that the future of work is a threat to people, that it's all about robots and automation and the matrix and jobs being lost. And some people would describe that as sort of the metaverse option. The other option is that it's an opportunity. And I sometimes call this the mindfulness option, that actually it can lead to an increase in health and well-being of people, better work-life balance, better work practices, because robots and automation are doing, the drudgery work for us. And I think it's within our gift at the moment to make one of those realities, and ideally the mindfulness, the positive future of work, a reality. And that's certainly our approach at Unilever, has been to look at what's happening in the future of work in terms of automation, in terms of the need for more flexibility and agility in work and that kind of thing. And to say, how can we make sure that that's an opportunity for our people, that it leads to better employee well-being by putting in place practices and procedures now. And that's essentially what I'm going to take you all through today. You'll see there, though, as part of my description about myself, I include my purpose in there. And the reason for this is that at Unilever, you probably know already, we are very much focused on being a purposeful organization. And as part of that, we have a belief that people with purpose thrive. And we have been running for a number of years now purpose workshops across our organization to encourage people to discover their purpose. And we believe purpose is a really powerful North Star that can help people navigate an uncertain and ambiguous world. So it's at the heart also of our process in terms of helping prepare people for the future of work. It's helping them stay focused on their purpose. My purpose is to bring the essence of Pollyanna into the room. For those of you who don't know Pollyanna, it's a book that was written a number of years ago in the 60s about a young girl called Pollyanna, who used to play the gladness game with her father and helped other people find gladness and joy in their lives, no matter what the situation. It's actually now a word, I think, in the English dictionary, describing someone who's excessively optimistic or joyful. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what I'm all about. I love optimism, love bringing joy into every setting I can, but also innovation. So Pollyanna is all about helping people see things with new eyes. And that's why I'm really delighted to be in this role at Unilever, because it's all about also helping our organization and our people see the future of work with new eyes, see it as an opportunity, not as a threat. So as I mentioned, Unilever is a purposeful organization. Our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. And we have built that on three main beliefs: that brands with purpose grow. So when our brands have a social mission or an environmental mission over and above just their functional benefits, then we know that they grow faster than our other brands. We believe that companies with purpose last. So companies that are purposeful in their approach, so making sustainable living commonplace, and have the right portfolio in support of that, the right tooling in support of that, that's going to last as a company. And then, as I mentioned, that people with purpose thrive. So we believe that we need to tackle head on this fourth industrial revolution, investing in capabilities for a very different world of work, creating a workplace that's more inclusive and a workforce that's more resilient and agile. So that's a little bit of an overall job description that I have, working together with my HR colleagues and the rest of the business to ensure that that happens. Our focus on the future of work came about roughly in 2017, 2018, when we started looking at all the trends impacting on the world of work. And we identified 5 key trends that we felt are going to influence the way we work, our workforce and the workplace. And therefore, that we believed we needed to have a framework to deal with these things. Just going in brief through these 5 key trends that we've been looking at. New operating models, challenging hierarchy. We saw things like agile coming through more and more mainstream, not just in the tech world, but also in businesses like our own. And so we felt we need to start trying to embrace that. This borderless workplace demanding flexible resourcing. So that's really about the rise of the gig economy and this access to talent that organizations like ourselves could have, and how we didn't need to just own all the talent to do work, but actually that we could access through freelancers, consultants, contractors. We could access great expertise. So how do we set ourselves up to do that well? The shifting workforce demographics, and in particular, an aging workforce across many of our markets, China, the UK, the USA, as examples. Much of Europe has an aging workforce, people living longer and needing to earn for longer, and therefore needing to be employed for longer in some shape or form. How are we personalizing for that workforce? And then also how are we then bridging this gap between having potentially 18-year-olds sitting alongside 60-plus-year-olds in the workforce? How do we increasingly personalize across that broad spectrum? Now, in every sense of the word, I think I mentioned it right at the start, our Future of Work program and framework is all about ensuring that people, no matter what, how they choose to describe themselves, that they can feel included and feel that the workplace is equitable for them in this place. And then I'm sure, as many of you know, there's the World Economic Forum and others have reported on this growing skills gap. I think they talk quite regularly about how 40% of the skills that people have will be redundant by 2025, and therefore those 40% of skills people need to reskill and upskill to stay relevant. And so given these 5 key trends, we came up with a series of commitments that we said we wanted to make. And these were made public in January last year, actually. It was commitments we made to contribute to a fairer and more socially inclusive world. I'm not going to go into detail across all of these commitments. I'm going to focus in on the 3 on the right-hand side, preparing people for the future of work, because that's been my focus area. But just to briefly say that our commitments went the broad range from ensuring a living wage is being paid not only in Unilever, but also across our broader supply chain, and also driving for more diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in our own workforce, but also then again in terms of the creative industry that we deal with in our Unilever advertising. How do we make sure that people from diverse groups are included both on screen and behind the camera? How are we making sure that we nurture more diverse suppliers across our supply chain as well? So these commitments cut across a number of areas. But in specifically, we made 3 commitments around preparing people for the future of work. So we said we'd pioneer new employment models to provide all our employees with flexible employment options. We'd reskill or upskill all our employees to have a future fit skill set, and we'd help equip 10 million young people with essential skills. So those 3 commitments in broad are in answer to those trends that I showed you on the previous slide. And we're really using these 3 commitments as a way to shift mindsets within the organization, to shift from a kind of learning for now mindset, let me equip myself with skills I need now for my current role, to really helping people think about how are they reskilling for the future. To shift from a mindset, particularly amongst our managers in our organization, of needing to own all their talents that they have, to thinking more about how can we access talent from both within and outside Unilever. And then also a broader mindset, especially as we go through transformations, of thinking beyond just that we have a replaceable workforce, i.e. that people can come and go and we'll just replace, just with recruiting people, after people are potentially made redundant, to really thinking about how can we think of our workforce as a renewable workforce, as a renewable asset, if you like, that people can be reskilled and learn new skills and actually move into new emerging areas of the business that need new and different skills, that actually we can do that with the resources that we have at our disposal now, rather than having to continually extract from other areas. So with these three mindsets in place, we believe that we could help our organization to use this future of work framework to help us perform for now and transform into the future. And there's three main areas I'm going to take you through. One was around what we call changing the way we change, how we could move from a traditional model in terms of how we transformed our business, in terms of doing, traditional consultation with people, having a plan of how we might be closing a site, how we would support people through that transition, but also how we might be making people redundant, to really putting that on its head and saying, how can we really work with our people right from the start to look at new and different solutions for how we transform our organization? How could we use lifelong learning as a strategic weapon and competitive advantage to make sure that we are renewing our organization and our workforce to then far more quickly achieve the skills that we need in new and different areas? And how could we increase our own agility as an organization through using new employment models to access talent rather than having to own all of our talent? So those are the three main themes I'll take you through in this session now, going forwards in terms of how we did that. Firstly, on change the way we change, our CEO came out with a statement last year around saying, in our view, jobs can be made redundant, but not people. And that's why we need to reskill. And that gets to the heart of what I'm talking about when I say moving from a replaceable workforce to a renewable workforce. We really think that there's an opportunity that we can, as far as possible, avoid redundancy by helping our people reskill and redeploy into other areas of the business. We all know that as humans, we're born with immense brain elasticity. When we're born, we don't know how to walk or talk or run or do anything, because our brains respond to our environment, learn from our environment, and see how we need to do those things. Unlike a giraffe that when it's born, within 5 hours, it's able to start running. It's pre-programmed to do that. We have got far more open minds. And so we believe that by leveraging that, we can really help people to reskill into new and emerging areas within the organization. And therefore, we've made a commitment that through all of our transformation programs, we're charging a 7% lifelong learning levy whenever we are going through a transformation. And that levy is to be used to reduce redundancy, to speed up change, avoid costly recruitment, and drive productivity by investing in people's reskilling and helping them shift their careers and jobs, maybe continuing inside Unilever, but also for opportunities outside Unilever. We're really focusing early on how we can drive that. And what I love about this is that it really forces people to think differently around how we transform our organization. And I've got an example, just one video I would like to share from a site in Italy in an area called Pozzelli, which is an economically depressed area within Italy. We had to close a site there. And instead of just going through the normal process, we came up with an innovative new solution as a result of using this lifelong learning levy. So let me just hopefully show that to you now.
Pozzelli is very important to the territory and has supported generations of families in the local community. After so many years, the site had become less strategic. Something needed to be done. Why close Pozzelli when we can transform it?
Unilever's vision is to build a better business and a better world. Pozzelli is a great example of leading for sustainability and social equality.
So I love that Pozzelli example, because it just shows you what's possible when you try a new and different approach to the future of work. So just in summary, what happened there, instead of closing the site, we've repurposed the site to become a recycling plant. It will recycle a lot of the plastics that we create across Europe. And all our employees in that site are going to be reskilled into running that recycling plant. So no one's going to lose a job or be made redundant. In fact, they'll all be reskilled to have a more sustainable skill set going forward. And that's at the heart of the future of work. It's encouraging our organization to shift mindset, shift thinking about how we've traditionally approached things, and to think about how do we drive this more renewable resource kind of idea. The next big idea, as I mentioned, was around shifting from learning for now to reskilling for the future, and really igniting lifelong learning within the organization. Again, we see this as good for the individual because it's keeping us future fit. It's good for Unilever because it helps us, develop key competitive advantage in certain areas by accelerating our skill development into those areas. Often for tricky new parts of the business, like let's say data science or e-commerce, you can hire people in from outside the organization. But if they don't really understand how your industry works or how the organization works, it can be really tricky for them to onboard and become productive. So often it can take, 6 months plus, not only from hiring them, but also then onboarding them. Whereas if we can actually reskill people internally into some of those jobs, we think we can halve some of that time to productivity here. And so that's what we really set out to do with our people. We help everyone to put together what we call a future fit plan that's based on their purpose. And it helps them think about whether they want to upskill to improve performance in their current role or current part of the organization, or if they want to reskill either internally or externally to emerging roles, or if they want to pursue other employment opportunities, embrace flexible working options beyond Unilever with other job security. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on when I talk about the flexible employment models. So every employee gets equipped or trained in terms of how to set up this future fit plan, how to think through this process. And the idea is that we can help people to identify how they can match with other opportunities, emerging opportunities across the organization. So for example, here's someone who's sitting in our customer replenishment part of the organization. They model demand plans and replenishment for key customers. Through the Future Fit Plan process, we help them see how much match there is between their skills and skills in emerging role areas. So either in brand management or digital project management or even e-commerce. And this is a real eye-opener for people because often they don't realize just how much match there is between their current skill set and emerging future roles. And this is another great opportunity area that we help open up for people and open their eyes and minds to, that actually, wow, I don't have to just sit in my silo of HR or finance or procurement or something like that. Actually, I can reskill and open up a number of different opportunity areas for myself. So a big drive within our learning organization at the moment is how do we create pathways for people to help them think about reskilling and moving into different parts of the organization. So here's just an example learning pathway that we created for someone in procurement. And what's interesting is you can see here, it's literally only over about 4 months that's required actually to give someone those practical skills to reskill into another area. And the reason it's a fairly short time frame is because actually a lot of the skill that we need in the organization is embedded into every role. That ability to network across the organization, to understand how Unilever works, the sort of soft skill elements are actually, and I think Josh Burson and others have spoken about this, more important than just having those technical skills. So if you can just help people develop those technical skills, develop an understanding of that new area of the business, and also have practical experience in that part of the business. That's that flex experience that you see highlighted there. We allow people to spend up to 20% of their time working in other parts of the organization. This gives them an experience of that area, but also gives that other parts of the business experience of them. And we've found that when we can help people, improve the matching between their skills and also improve their contact with other parts of the organization, you know, that kind of knowledge and awareness. Once we get those two axes working together, that's when you can really help people to make these transitions. So I'm going to show you another short video as well of a lovely lady in our Brazilian business, Priscilla, who we introduced this concept of reskilling to, and I just want you to see her reaction to this.
Hello, I'm Priscila Monteiro. I'm Procurement Manager for Animal Proteins and Farming Ingredients, responsible for Latin America, and I am being part of the reskilling program for CD, and I will share with you my first impressions since I was presented to this program until now that I'm being part of it. And I must confess that when I was first presented to the program, I was thinking, oh my God, customer development, but I'm in procurement now, and I was not sure about CD, and then but I was open to listen, and when HR presented to me the program, and then she shared with me that 80% of the skills are common. So 80% of the required skills are common. Really? So this is amazing, and we should only focus on developing 20% of the skills, and this is the nice part of it. Having some challenges on of course learning different things, and different and common things as well, because for example I am buying and I would learn on selling, so I was then really excited.
I'm just pausing it there. I just wanted to give you a quick sense of Priscilla's reaction, because again, as I said, I love this, and you know my purpose is around helping people see things with new eyes and differently. And again, I share these examples of Priscilla and Priscilla because in both of them, you know, the organization and the individuals are able to see things with new eyes for the first time. And that, again, I think is the power of this program around preparing people for the future of work, because we can definitely help people create a better future rather than just having the future done to them when we prepare in this way. You know, interestingly, our research showed that when we ask people how many skills they have, on average, they come up with about 10 skills. But when we combine with AI, looking through their job descriptions, the AI comes up with an average around 30 skills. And when you have 30 skills, you can match people much easier with different jobs and roles and opportunities going forwards versus only with 10 skills. And I think this is where some of our approach to the future of work and preparing in advance and being proactive about it is really helping us, because now we're able to see how we can help people see more opportunities for themselves rather than less as a result of automation and AI and robotics. And I firmly believe that as we use AI in an ethical and responsible way, we can really augment human potential rather than take away from it. And in that way, we can help our people, as you see here, with transparency of opportunities, more clarity on career options, greater agency in becoming future fit. And for the organization, there's all sorts of benefits, and for society as well. The last thing I'll take you through is just our concept around moving from access to owning talent. So how we're making a shift there to become more agile with new employment models. And this links strongly back to the ideas around the rise of the gig economy and new models challenging hierarchy like agile. We were thinking about how do we create a responsible alternative to the gig economy, and how could we create our own loyal, if you like, contractor workforce. And in that way, how could we reimagine the employee life cycle? That it's not the standard process that you see on the left there in the kind of gray, where people get recruited, they develop in their role, and then they either resign, retire, or made redundant. But how do we create a far more dynamic employee life cycle where people, are recruited and join Unilever, they can develop in their current role, but then they could also reskill and redeploy into new roles and then develop again. Or they can reskill for employment beyond Unilever, or they can explore new employment models, new ways of interacting with Unilever, sharing their skills and expertise, getting paid for that, but doing it in a way that brings flexibility and agility for themselves in terms of what they desire. And so it's that last piece that I'll focus in on now. When we looked at employment models, we realized there's basically two options here. There's the traditional employment models, being full or part-time employed. You're a fixed cost to the organization and you work in a specific job role. Or there's new employment models where the workforce is more liquid, agile and flexible, lower costs are coming and going as required, but could find a way to make sure that it meets people's needs to live and earn differently with financial security. I think the challenge that we all know with the gig economy is that whilst it provides lots of flexibility, is not the security that you get from the traditional employment models. And so we thought, how could we find a new employment model that would bridge the gap between gig work and being a regular employee? And we came up with this idea of U-work. In the U-work employment model, people retain their Unilever employment status, but they no longer have a job title. They're no longer fixed to a specific role in Unilever. They still get a guaranteed minimum income, a retainer every month, and they get core benefits around healthcare and pension, but they are modified based on the amount that they work in Unilever. And then all they're required to do is work for us for 6 weeks in a year. The rest of the time, they can decide how and where and when they want to work. But essentially, we will be offering them various contracts of work that they can do in Unilever, and then they will get paid for that contract, just as a freelancer would. So that would be the way in which they would make their income, but they're also free to choose how many or how little contracts to do, how many days a week they want to work on that. And the rest of the time, they're free to look after their family. They're free to move into retirement. They're free to travel the world. These are all different options that people have taken as they've moved into U-work. In fact, our previous chief learning officer, whose role I've now taken over, Tim Munden, has moved into U-work, and he's using it as a way to slowly move into developing his own consultancy, an area of expertise around learning and well-being. But he's able to do it now, retaining his employment status, retaining some security of working with Unilever, but then also able to explore how to set up his own business. So we find that it works on a number of fronts. It's now live in around 8 countries. We've got around 80 employees already working in U-work. And we see that steadily growing. It's definitely not going to become the mainstream way of working in Unilever, at least in the short term. But we see up to 5% of our 150,000 employees potentially moving into U-work in the future. And that gives Unilever this sort of lower overhead cost. It gives us a loyal contractor talent pool, ability to flex talent to value as and when we need it. But it also gives our own people, again, greater agency over their careers, their engagement at work, flexibility of opportunities as well. And for society, an engaged and resilient workforce, income protection for people and reduce social inequality. I think that's the end of my presentation. So I will stop sharing now and be open for some Q&A. So Sharon, back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paddy, for that insightful presentation. I'm fascinated by the matching, the skills, and I can imagine just the how you have opened people's eyes actually within Unilever and just developed your network of people that you're working with. So thank you for sharing all of those insights. So yeah, questions, please, whether it's for Paddy or for Tina, who of course sits on our Employee Health and Wellness Wellbeing Working Group. We have one already here, so thank you, Paddy. Interesting approach. Could you be able to give some feedback on how this has been received in terms of age groups? Something around, yeah, maybe if you could comment on younger employees and maybe people are at the end of their life cycle. Have you seen differences, or yeah, anything you could feed on different feedback from different age groups on future of work?
So I think overall, in terms of our framework for the future of work, our approach in terms of helping people with lifelong learning, able to access different flexible options and that kind of thing, overall, there's very positive response from the workforce on the overall framework. In terms of U-Work specifically, I'm not too sure if that was specifically around U-Work, but in terms of U-Work, again, we've found actually very broad-based interest in it across the organization. We'd initially thought that it would be more appropriate for our older generation of employees, that would give them a way in which they could more slowly move into full retirement, so they could extend their employment for a longer period, but do it in a way that is more flexible for them, because they're probably not wanting to work 5 days a week. But equally also would give us flexibility in terms of cost as well, that they could move into U-Work, then they're not a full-time employee cost, they're more on a contract basis, and we could leverage their expertise and experience for specific projects in the organization. So we initially thought it would be more relevant to them, but we found that we've had working parents join U-Work because they've wanted more flexibility and time to look after their children. We've had young people join U-Work as well, and who've decided they want to set up a small business on the side or support their parents' business, and so they can do that as well. Or in fact, we've had recently one of our women in our sustainability team has decided to cycle from London to Beijing and has joined U-Work, so that en route on her travels, she'll do projects as and when she needs to earn some more income and stuff and carry on going. But in the past, she would have had to have resigned if she wanted to embark on a project like that. And now she doesn't have to. She can join U-Work. So we found its appeal to various different people across different segments, and it's given us quite a lot of confidence, therefore, in terms of rolling it out to more and different countries to see how it can meet the needs of employees there.
Great, thank you. And another question that's come to me, a part of our work stream we have with Tina and colleagues, we've spoken a lot about the hybrid model, the future of kind of where we will work, how we will work across multiple sites. Can you tell us a bit more about the kind of flexible employment, and how do you manage that with the different types of roles that you have in Unilever? Does it go beyond knowledge workers?
Yeah, so it does. In short, it does go beyond knowledge workers. In fact, when we piloted it in the UK, U-Work specifically, we piloted it in one of our factory sites and in an office site. And we've had a couple of our artisans and apprentices move into U-Work. In fact, I could see a potential in the future. They say you underestimate what will happen in 10 years and overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years, sort of thing. So if I'm looking with a 10-year horizon, I could see actually U-Work being even more prevalent in our factories, because if we think with the increase in automation, robotic process automation in particular, actually we don't need artisans on the line, the whole time running the factory. You need them on specific improvement projects and or on maintenance things. And then they can run another business on the side, and so get dual income. So I definitely see a model like that being relevant in our factories. And we also, as we mentioned in our commitments, we want to continue to pioneer and think up new employment models that'll work for people as the world of work continues to change. There will be obviously new and different ways that we want to keep working. Hybrid, I think, is was necessitated by COVID, made us all realize that hybrid is possible. And I think that's kind of one of the first steps to sort of mainstreaming the fact that how and where we work, it doesn't have to be in an office, can be in multiple different contexts for people, or indeed, even in a factory. Our factories as well, I'm sure many of the other members of the Consumer Goods Forum have this. We have a lot of remote management of our factories now. As they're increasingly digitizing, people don't have to be right there looking after the factory. They can also be remote and outside the factory. So I think that trend's only going to continue, and a hybrid is going to be table stakes, in terms of ways of working going forwards. It's going to become increasingly not just hybrid, that'll be mainstream, and we'll be working in all sorts of different ways and means, leveraging technology and hopefully, if we prepare for it right, augmenting the way we do things.
Great, thanks, Paddy. So Elisabetta finds your concept brilliant about the purpose of making sure people are happy and they're in the right place with what they're doing. She wants to know what are the main resistances, if any, that you found when you started talking about this purpose. What concerns people might realize they're not in the right place, and how do you respond to that when that discovery or realization happens?
Great question. And I mean, I think Priscilla, whose video I showed, is a great example of the sort of reaction from people to this idea around reskilling and how your skills can be used in different areas. So initially there's sort of disbelief that I could do other work. There's also resistance sometimes, people saying, oh, hang on, no, I think I'm safer, in my current space and place. I'm not too sure that I want to take this risk to reskill into something else, an unknown future, a new and different team that I need to work with. So, especially when you've been in a role for some time, it's quite hard to think about a shift into a completely different area of the organization. So there is all of that resistance from employees themselves, but that's really just managing through the change curve and helping people see the opportunity. And the more great examples we have, like Priscilla, doing that kind of thing, the more people believe that it's possible. I think, though, the bigger resistance actually comes from line managers, and that whole idea of moving from owning talent to accessing talent. So line managers, we've all grown up in this kind of hierarchical model, and the bigger your team, the more important you are in the organization, and managers love having lots of team members reporting into them to get lots of stuff done. And so helping line managers let go of people as well, saying let them go and reskill or move into other areas of the business. Think about how you can access skills rather than just having a person, reporting into you directly. There's quite a bit more resistance in that space. And I know as we've tried to bring in things like flex experiences, where we give people the opportunity to work in other areas for 20% of their time, we've tried to keep emphasizing to managers that the managers of the future are the ones who enable their people to do this kind of thing, explore different opportunities. The managers of the past are the ones who just hold on to all their people and keep their little siloed organization. So again, trying to leverage the bright spots, trying to show people what's possible is the way we're trying to break down those sorts of barriers to change. But it is definitely an ongoing journey. We don't have all the answers to that one yet, but I think the more and more we show people that this is becoming more mainstream, the future of work is here. It's just not evenly distributed, and the more people can grab onto that idea that, hey, if I want to be future fit, I'm going to operate in these ways, then the more we can overcome that initial inertia.
And it's great the way you've positioned it around accessing talent, the amount of people, looking at it in a completely different way. So the next question is around productivity. Do you have any evidence, Paddy, or first kind of results on regular staff compared to you work staff, or any nuggets that you can share with us that you've found so far?
Yeah, so I'll share a couple of things. So we know, first of all, that someone who's in new work is not as inexpensive as a full-time employee, because they're coming and going and working on contracts. So there's a cost-saving element to it. We also know that actually, bringing in new workers to work on contracts is more productive than bringing in someone, completely foreign to the organization, a contractor or freelancer who doesn't know Unilever, because new workers can hit the ground running a whole lot faster. And we're building up a bigger evidence. I don't have a specific number yet for you in terms of it's X% more. We're actually building up that database of knowledge now to see how much faster we've been able to do projects using new workers versus outside contractors. So we can see, we're mainly looking at time to productivity, how much faster can people hit the ground running as new workers rather than as outside contractors. Also, just on the reskilling and upskilling piece, we're doing the same piece of work there. So the idea there as well, that we can show that reskilling people is more effective and productive than just recruiting in from the outside, because we can shorten that time to productivity. So our big focus at the moment is really trying to measure that. We've got pretty much the baselines in terms of how long it takes someone to be productive when they're recruited in. Now it's about measuring that from reskilling. How are we shortening that time? And we estimate, though, that there's at least a 30% productivity gain that we can get from this. So if we can prove that, then we've got a real benefit to the business.
Brilliant. And just bridging to skills, the next question is on, have you identified the most common and valuable skills for the future? What are they?
So we've got kind of two sets of those skills. We've got a set of skills that we call priority skills. So these are broad skills across the business, ranging from change management and agile to data analytics, even Microsoft Excel, for example, as basic skills. So we've said these are priority skills that most people across the business need to some extent, and we investing specifically behind programs and getting people working on those priority skills. So as a learning team, we set up those skills looking at what our organization broadly needs and what the future trends were showing. But then for each function as well, we've done the same work to say, for each function, what are the future fit skills for that function? So in HR, for example, agile coaching is, come through as a strong one, change management, these sorts of things. And then said, okay, for that function, each function needs to identify those skills. And then when people are doing their future fit plans, they need to be able to see, what are the skills I need to grow and develop to be future fit in my function? But equally, they can then see how their current skills match to the skills in other functions as well, through things that we call role plans. So they can then see, actually, maybe I also match with skills in finance or data and analytics, and maybe that's what I want to reskill into. The process we went through was looking externally, using the World Economic Forum data, looking at other databases around what are the skills that are in demand, as well as looking internally what our own leaders are saying they need in each of the functions. And we've put that together into these functional future fit skills role plans to help people assess that. Tina was heavily involved in that.
Yeah, Tina, anything you want to comment on, or things that we can bring back to our employee work? She might have another question for you, but Tina, yeah, anything you want to add?
No, just to add, so I know we've come at this also, and we've looked at this also in the discussion we've had here in our working group from a well-being point of view, and I think there's a really, really strong link also to well-being. If we really think about future of work, trying to get us employment for life, that only works if you make sure people are healthy, they find the energy to perform, of course. And this is also why it's so closely linked to purpose, right? Because that for us is also, we started the purpose journey long before we started actually the future of work plan, right? So it came from a leadership development point of view. It found its ways at the core of our strategy, both from a business point of view, but also from a people point of view. And we've trained more than 55,000 employees, I think. And we've run with them a Discover Your Own Purpose workshop. And there is a risk, because there's a belief that if you know about your purpose, if you can find it at work, that also provides you with the energy to perform, and the well-being and health is exactly in the same space. So if you really want to create models where people can find employment for life, that's why it starts with purpose, and why also, for example, well-being is a significant part in the future fit planning, because we just need to make sure that everyone has the right place. And that also means a job and a role where they can find their purpose, where they can then live their purpose, but also how they can work to stay well and healthy. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. And definitely something we need to take on board, and finding that energy to continue to perform and be well and happy at work is so important. Probably one of the last questions around today is International Women's Day. So taking this opportunity, could you tell us a bit more about your what you see as the future of women at work, Paddy? Anything you want to share for all of us listening?
Yes, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a firm believer in finding the opportunity in the future of work when we prepare in advance for it, rather than it being a threat. So I believe the future of work is going to be an opportunity for diversity in every sense of the word, whether that's for women, people of color, people disadvantaged, disabled, every single area. We've got the opportunity now to create a more equitable and inclusive future of work when we look at helping people, consider their skills better. So the other bit of our research showed that, as we said, on average, people think they've got 10 skills. When you use AI, they get 30 skills. Actually, women and disadvantaged groups underrepresent their skills even more when asked. So if we can use AI and automation to help people get a truer representation of their skills, again, we can create a more equitable workforce. We can give people more opportunities. Likewise, by introducing more and more flexibility into how and where we work, models like you work and hybrid and all of that, again, we can meet people's needs and lifestyle commitments far more effectively. I saw a comment today actually in our canteen, celebrating International Women's Day, saying, the 9 to 5 is old news. Actually, into the future, it's going to be far more flexible. And I do think the kind of 40-hour, 40-year, 40-week sort of construct that we've all worked in terms of employment is due for a bit of a rethink and a rework. And that's why we're trying to experiment with all these different things, because I think both for women and, as I said, for all sectors, the future of work is the opportunity to create something far more inclusive and meaningful for everyone. So, yeah, again, as I said, I'm the optimist here. I see the opportunity as long as we prepare and do it in an inclusive and equitable and thoughtful way.
And Paddy, do you see this going mainstream, or is this something? Some of this seems quite new. Do you see other peer organizations doing this as well, or it's still quite new in terms of its development?
Yeah, I must admit that at the moment, we still feel a little bit out there on some of the things that we're talking about. So it doesn't feel like, it's definitely not mainstream yet. Do I believe it'll become mainstream? Yes, I do. As I said, we underestimate what the world will look like in 10 years' time. I think concepts like the 4-day week, you work, these kinds of things will become increasingly mainstream, actually, and they'll need to. Like COVID, unfortunately, it was a pandemic, but like it forced us to rethink and relook at ways of working. I think automation and shifts that we're going to see in the world are going to also force us to really relook things like the 5-day week and that sort of thing, and really consider how do we help people find greater well-being, opportunities to do things outside of work, opportunities to be creative and this kind of thing. If we continue to sort of try and treat people more like robots, then our jobs will be taken by the robots. But if we start trying to treat people more as humans who are creative, who are crazy, interesting, amazing people who do things that you don't expect, then and are curious and can learn all the time, then we'll create a world of work for humans to live in. And so I think this stuff will become mainstream, but we need to get out of our mindset of, everyone must work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, tied to the desk. We've started that journey a little bit now, but we need to make a few more of these things mainstream.
Yeah, there's definitely a mindset shift that's needed in many parts of the world. Again, so maybe the last question, definitely, one that robots can't do: happiness. And do you have a way that you look and measure the impact your approach is having on employee happiness at Unilever?
I don't know that we've got happiness exactly, but Tina referenced the purpose work that we've been doing, and we have used the London School of Economics to come and do a longitudinal study for us to look at the impact those purpose workshops are having on both people's well-being and their productivity. And what we found is, people being able to spend that time with their colleagues, just focusing on themselves and their purpose and telling stories with one another. Those people who've been through those workshops, if we compare, we did some A/B testing, people who've been through the workshops, people who haven't been. Those who had been through the workshops reported a 49% higher sense of intrinsic motivation. They were also, I think, 23% more likely to go the extra mile. They also reported increase, I can't remember the exact percentages, but in their health and well-being, in their collaboration with colleagues. So we have made an attempt to get towards measuring, more specifically some of these outcomes on well-being and productivity of our employees. And the data that we've got from London School of Economics is definitely pointing in the right direction. So we use that with our leaders to make sure that they continue investing in this approach.
Great, thank you. And there's just one, you did mention this already, it's around young people entering the workforce, and how do you strike that balance in the this new way of working for their maybe their first jobs? Yeah, any final comments on just the new hybrid model of working, in particular for young people who are just entering the workforce?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think there's still quite a raging debate as to how well hybrid works for young people entering the workforce, when we know they need mentoring, they need to understand how things work, how to connect with senior colleagues. It's much easier for someone like me who's been in the business forever to make connections via Zoom or Teams with people and reach out to people when you're new and young in the organization. Obviously, that's really hard to do if you haven't been able to meet people face to face. So I think we've always said, the office has a role to play, but it should be a different role. It should be that creativity, that collaboration, that innovation type role. I used to look after our leadership development center for a few years that we have in Kingston called 4 Acres. And I always remember people were always so excited to come there because they were out of the office. They were away from their computers for a bit. They were connecting with colleagues. They were collaborating. They were getting creative. They were brainstorming. And I can't help get out of my mind that that's actually what the normal office needs to be like in the future. Yeah, people should be excited to go to the office because they're getting away from their laptop and all that in their home office. They're getting to collaborate and work together with people. And I think for young people, it should fulfill the same purpose. It doesn't need to be 5 days a week for them either, but it needs to fulfill that purpose of, can you bring people together? Can you help them make the connections they need so that they can then go and work from home as needed. So I think more work to be done, but I think the office is here to stay, but just it needs to be remodeled for that creativity and collaboration, which I think many people are doing to their office spaces. I think it's exactly the right thing. The only other caveat I would put on that is I've been coming back to the office slowly now and realized that you really need to be intentional about making sure you are going out there and chatting to people and setting up meetings and getting people there. If you just arrive in the office and expect to collaborate and all that, doesn't happen because everyone's busy doing other stuff and that kind of thing. So yeah, there is a bit of relearning and reskilling that we need to do to make this new kind of office environment work.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Tina and Paddy, for sharing this today. Loads of food for thought, and hopefully you've given inspiration to everyone listening today or in the future to this session. So any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you so much again, Tina and Paddy, and we'll continue to follow and see how things develop. And thank you everyone for listening today.